When I first moved to the Washington, D.C. area, it was a little disconcerting for many reasons. It's actually a very cool city to live in. The best thing about it is there's 3 airports, lots of options. But as a Canadian, it's pretty cool, the Washington Monument, the Capitol, the White House. But the thing that bothered me the most is when I first moved there, is that I was always getting lost. Why? Has anybody here been to Washington, D.C.? D.C.? Yeah. Okay, what is the highway system called there? Okay, you were there, but clearly you were not on the highway. Okay? Okay. The highway system there is called the Beltway. Why do they call it the Beltway? Because it's shaped like a belt. All right? It's shaped like an oval. So why did this bother me? Because you never know what direction you're going in. North, south, east, or west, you have no idea because you're in a circle. I grew up in Toronto. If you're on the 400 highway, you're going north and south. If you're on the 401, you're going east and west. You always know what direction you're in. But here, you have no idea what direction you're in. Even the locals don't know. They pretend they know. They don't know. On the traffic reports in the morning, they talk about the traffic on the inner loop and the outer loop. The inner loop this morning, the outer loop. So I asked somebody local who grew up there, what do they mean by the inner loop and outer loop? And she said, I have no idea. Okay, so they don't know, but they pretend. So when I went off there, and the first time I tried to find my way to a kosher donut place, Krispy Kreme on the other side of town, I got completely lost. It was like my first week there, like so lost. I called up my husband. I was crying because I was trying to get myself unlost and this was not working. I called up my husband crying. I said, Yaakov, I'm lost. I have no idea where I am, but come and get me. Like I really, literally had no idea where I was. And then somebody bought me a GPS and my whole life changed. If it wasn't for this GPS, I would not be here. I'd still be lost in Washington, D.C., I promise you. The first time I used the GPS, I remember the first time I used it, I had to go from D.C. to Baltimore, which is about 45 minutes away. I have a good friend in Denver whose father passed away, and I'm going to the funeral. And as I'm driving and using the GPS, I was like, first of all, that little lady in the box is my BFF, okay? My best friend forever. I love her. You know what's so great about her? You make a mistake, she never yells at you. She just says, recalculating. She's so nice. Not like your spouse, okay? All right. Which is this afternoon's talk. All right. So as I'm driving, I realize this is a tremendous mashal, a tremendous metaphor for life. All of us have a GPS. Built in, comes with the factory, inside us. It's our God positioning system. It's our neshama. It's our soul. Just like the GPS in our car can't work until we do certain things, so too the GPS, our God positioning system, inside us. What's the first thing you have to do with the GPS in your car? What's the first thing you have to do? You have to switch it on. You have to switch it on. So too with our souls. You gotta plug in and turn on. You wake up in the morning, Modeh ani lefanecha melech vikayam she'azalta b'nishmasi b'chemla rabba amuna secha. Thank you, God, for restoring my soul. Great is your faithfulness in me. You had such faith in me, you gave me another day. Not everybody woke up this morning. We did. What are we going to do with this day? Plug in, turn on to God. If you don't know the Hebrew, just wake up and say, thank you. I'm alive. All right, so that's turning on. What's the next thing you have to do with your GPS in your car? You got to program it. You got to put in where you're going. So too with our internal GPS. If you don't know where you're going, in every aspect of your life, God can't get you there. Where are you going in your marriage? Where are you going with that child? Where are you going in your Judaism? Where are you going in your personal potential? If you don't know where you're going, God can't get you there. So now, I'm driving, I'm getting a little bit overconfident, I'm drinking my Starbucks, I'm talking on the phone, I'm listening to the radio. Don't try this at home, all right? And the little lady in the box said something, and I missed it. I missed it. Why? Because I wasn't listening. We're not listening. The Almighty is always trying to help us to make the right turns in life, and we're not listening. Our relationship with the Almighty, in terms of conversation, is not one way. It's not a one-way conversation. The Almighty talks back to us all the time, not through a voice. If you heard the Almighty in a voice in the clouds or on a mountaintop this morning, I'm sure we have therapists in the room to help you, right? That's not how he talks to us. He talks to us through hashgacha pratis, through divine supervision. Everything in life happens for a reason. Nothing is by chance. There's no such thing as luck, chance, or coincidence. Never say, I'm lucky. Say, I'm blessed. Life is chance or coincidence. It means life is chaos. Everything happens for a reason. You're sitting beside the person you're sitting beside for a reason, all right? Whether it's here or it's on an airplane, right? The green light is either green or red for a reason. Everything happens for a reason. The Almighty's talking to us. But we're not listening. Can I tell you, it's one thing that we do at our Shabbos table, and my husband said this is the one thing that changed our family and our community. We tell hashgacha stories on Friday night. We have many, many guests. When I'm home, we have many, many guests for Shabbos, like 25 people Friday night for lunch. We love it. And many of our guests are not religious, and sometimes it's their first Shabbat experience. So at the end of the meal, I bring the dessert out, and then I bring an extra basket of goodies, like lollies or sour sticks. And I say, okay, now we're going to tell hashgacha stories, and these are the prizes. So my guests are freaking out because I said a word with in it, okay? All right. So I explained to them what hashgacha is, that life is not chance or coincidence, that everything happens for a reason. And here are the rules at my Shabbos table. So, and you're all invited. You really are. All right. Not the same week. All right. So imagine. So the rules at our table are as follows. If you've never been to our Shabbat table, this is your first time, you can tell a story of Yad Hashem, of God's hand in your life, from your whole life. Just tell a story that you saw God's hand in your life from your whole life. And for those who have been to our Shabbos table before, you have to tell a story from your week. It had to happen this week. And people, our regulars know, including our regulars who live in our house, know that they have to have a story or they don't get a prize. And I have to tell you that this changed our family. It really did. When my kids were little, they would stand up on a chair and they would tell this long, involved story about Bubby's dog or something, and then at the end we go, yay, and give them a prize, all right? Then they started catching on, and they realized what we're talking about, where they saw Yad Hashem, the hand of God. So when they were little, as they're getting a little bit older, so their stories always ended the same way. And then we didn't have to go to school. And then the teacher didn't show up. And then the test was canceled, all right? Then we didn't have to learn God's Torah. Give me my prize, okay? It's a little bit like, okay. But then they got more mature, and they really started seeing it. And the more you're listening, the more he talks. God's saying, now you're listening, now let's talk. My kids will now come home in the middle of the week. Three hashgachas happened today. And people are saving up their stories. What's going to be their story this week? I highly encourage you to bring this to your family, and many of our guests have done this, and it makes it so real. And you start seeing life, again, is not chance or coincidence, that everything is happening for a reason. So we're going through life, and a lot of times we're making the wrong turns because we're not listening. Why? Because our stuff is getting in the way. Our stuff. We're the ones getting in the way. We can't hear God's message. There's a lot of static and a lot of noise, and it's going on in here. It's going on right inside our heads. And we are the cause of it. I have found that people fall under two categories. Either they are living in the future, or they're living in the past. Where does worry, fear, and anxiety live? Future or past? Future. Future. Worry, fear, and anxiety. What's going to happen? What's going to be? What's going to be? In the future. Where does guilt, regret, and blame live? Past. So I found in general that people are primarily either future people, worry, fear, and anxiety, or past people. They're dwelling on the past and regret, blame, and pointing fingers and beating themselves up. If you're both, get help, okay? We're primarily one or the other. How many people here are future people? You live in the future. Worry, fear, and anxiety. Okay. How many people are past people? How many people did not vote? South Africans, you're unbelievable. Every audience, they're like, as if I didn't notice you didn't put up your hand, okay? Yes, you're so emotionally healthy. You're just living right here in the present. You're hilarious. Americans, they vote twice, okay? Like in Palm Beach County. Okay, all right. Who put up their hand, their future? Who's a future person? Okay, show me you're a future person? Show me the future. Show it to me. You can't. Why? It hasn't happened yet. Who's a past person? Past person? Show me the past. Right, but can you show it to me? No. Why? Because it's already happened, all right? It's over. Listen, ladies and gentlemen. We are spending an unbelievable amount of time, energy, headspace, emotion, and resources worrying about the future and dwelling on the past, and they don't exist. Do you hear the insanity? They're illusion. We create them as if we turn them into reality. How many things have you ever worried about that never happened? Countless. Boy, that was a waste of time. And what's going on? We're so busy here and there that we're missing out on the only reality, and that is now. Now. We are never here. We're flipping out about the future or flipping out about the past, and we're never in reality. We're never here. Now. This is the only thing that exists. But you're saying, oh my gosh, but there's so many things happening in my life. Of course I'm worried about the future. Like this situation, and this, and I have to deal with this person, and this medical thing, and this. It's not your situation that creates your emotional reality. It's your thoughts. It's not your situation, it's your thoughts. And thoughts are just thoughts. You can have a trauma in a family, God forbid. Let's say a divorce. 3 kids. They grow up. One, I'm never getting married. The other one, I'm going to become a marriage counselor and help people with their marriages. Another one is galvanized to create a movement, right, and write a book to help people with their marriage. 3 different children, the same trauma, 3 different reactions. It's not your situation, it's your thoughts. And thoughts are just thoughts. When you're in a state of worry, anxiety, fear, or blame, guilt, and regret, and you have a situation in front of you, if you're in one of those states, are you going to make good choices? No, you're going to make terrible choices. Terrible choices. When you're in one of those states, that's God's message to you, your thoughts are wrong. Now, we're not here to tell you, you've got a heavy situation in front of you, look on the bright side, be happy. No, this is a heavy situation. But living in fear, anxiety, and panic, and you're freaking out, is not going to help you deal with your situation. We're not waiting for happy. We're waiting for the 3 C's: clear, calm, connected. When you're in a state and you're clear, calm, and connected, now make a decision. Now have that significant conversation. Now click send on the email. Does anybody here have Gmail? I'm on Gmail, all right? Gmail? So Gmail has this new function, it's called undo. Do you know about it? It's called undo. You can there's a way to put it onto your Gmail. It's called undo. It means that if you click send and you immediately regret, you have about 3 seconds to click undo and they never got it. Is that cool? All right. My husband and I, when we lived in Denver, Colorado a few years ago, we had a Sunday morning show called The Palatniks. It was a Sunday morning show, and it was not a Jewish show, but it was clear my husband is Jewish, because I kept calling him the rabbi. Rabbi, what do you think? It was a call-in show, and we had different ethical questions and subjects and themes every week. It was a lot of fun. When they trained us on the board, and I have a little bit of background in radio, they trained us in the studio on the board. They taught us, this is the volume, this is how you take the calls, and then they said, this is the most important button. What's this button? The 8-second delay button. When you hear something on the radio, it actually happened 8 seconds ago. There's an 8-second delay. So they told us, if you get a caller and they call in and they use a word they shouldn't use, hit that button and the last 8 seconds will never be heard. Or if you say something and you regret that you said it, hit the button and the last 8 seconds will never be heard. What was I thinking? I wish I had this button in my life. 8 seconds, 8 minutes, 8 years, all right? So again, it's not your situation, it's your thoughts. And they're only thoughts. What do? Don't try to take these thoughts of anxiety and fear and guilt and replace them with happy thoughts. Now you got a whole mess of thoughts. Let the thoughts go. Let them go. And wait for clarity. Clear, calm, connected. Yeshuva das. A settled mind. That's your goal. That's where you want to be living. That's the place where you can make good choices. That's the state where God can get in and you can hear him. And it'll be clear which choice to make. Otherwise, we think, overthink, think, busy minds, and there is no clarity. How do we let the thoughts go? Whatever works, works. According to the studies, where is the number one place that people get that Eureka moment? I got it. I got the answer. Where's the number one place? The shower. It's true. The shower. Why? Because you're not thinking, right? Because when you're overthinking, you often don't get any clarity. The time to think is when you're calm, clear, and connected. The shower. You know where the number two place is? Ironing. And that's why your maid is a lot happier than you. Clear your head. Wait for that clarity. Stop overthinking. Let time often takes care of it. Sleeping on it. You know, one of the worst, this is for the marriage talk, but one of the worst pieces of marital advice that somebody gives, and I hope I'm not offending anyone here, never go to sleep angry. Is that good advice? That's bad advice. Sometimes it's better to go to sleep angry and you wake up, you're not so angry anymore, all right? My husband has a 24-hour rule. He didn't tell me this until years into our marriage. What's the 24-hour rule? He says, I do something that makes him upset, which has happened twice in our marriage, all right? He waits, this is for the guys, he waits 24 hours before he talks to me about it. Why? Because 24 hours later, most of the time, he can't even remember what he was upset about. He can't. But 24 hours later, if he does remember, then now he's calm. And now we can talk it out, those 2 times, all right? So whatever works, works. Yoga, swimming, meditation, sleeping on it, time. I know somebody who in their mind puts all this emotion into a helium balloon in their mind and they let it go. Just let the thoughts go. They're only thoughts. Your situation is your situation. But instead of looking at it as this unbelievable, overwhelming problem, my Rebbetzin always says, this is good for a magnet, we should make magnets for our fridges. My Rebbetzin says, there are no problems, there are only opportunities for growth. And some of our opportunities are very big, all right? Tremendous growth opportunities. The Almighty is trying to squeeze the potential out of us. The worst thing as a parent, you have like parent-teacher night here? Is this what you do this, parent-teacher night? The worst thing for a parent, I find, when I go to parent-teacher night, is when the teacher says, your child is so smart, but they're not realizing their potential. It's so painful. They're just, either getting good grades, right? But they're not realizing their potential. How painful it is for the Almighty to look down at us. He knows the opportunities He gave us. He knows the brain, the family, the smarts, the looks, the resources. And we're not realizing our potential. And He loves us too much to let us waste our lives. Imagine it's the first day of school, and my daughter comes home and says, Ima, I have a new science teacher. He's the best. I love this science teacher. I go, really? How come? She said, he told us there are no tests. No tests. He's moonlighting at a community college, and he has no time to grade. There's no test. I love this science, the best science teacher ever. And what am I thinking? As I'm calling up the principal to get this guy fired? This is the worst science teacher. If my child knows there's no tests, is she going to study hard? Is she going to give it her all? Is she going to realize her potential in the subject? No. She's just going to slide. Anybody here a teacher? Teachers. What do you teach? Grade 2. So when you announce a test, do you have tests in grade 2 here? Okay, they're so cute. So when you announce a test, why are you giving the test? Yeah, to see if you're a good teacher. Are they absorbing the material? And what's your goal in the year for these kids? Right, you want to get them to a certain level. You want them to realize their potential, right, in this year. That's your goal. Now, when you assign a task, is that what the children are thinking? Thank you so much for caring so much about my potential. No. They're thinking, what a crap. I hate this teacher gets off on giving me pain. Okay, this is what we all thought when we got a test, right? When the Almighty sends us tests, He sends the tests because He cares. Because He cares. If He didn't care, He wouldn't bother getting into our lives and helping us to realize our potential. I wish it was that we all realize our potential when everything's going amazing, when everything's going great. Now I have to tell you, my husband's a rabbi. Rabbis never get these calls. Hello, Rabbi. My name is so-and-so. Somebody told me I should call you. I have to tell you, my life's a dream. My marriage, it's bliss. My kids could not be more respectful. I have more money than I could use in 1,000 lifetimes. I want to get together with you, Rabbi, to talk about, what do you think God is telling me? How can I grow through this? We don't get those calls. We get the opposite calls, right? Health, wealth, marriage, everything's going down. That's when they call up a rabbi. That's when they're thinking, what is God telling me? That's when they start reaching down deep and find out what they're really made of. My husband always tells me, greater than stopping and think, what is God telling me when things are going bad? When things are going good, when you get that windfall of money, when your health comes, when the tests for the health come back and it's a great answer, when you're getting along wonderfully in these relationships, that's the time to stop and think, what's God telling me? What's the message? How can I grow in my potential? How can I strengthen my relationship with the Almighty when good things happen? Don't wait for heavy things to happen. And much better to get God's messages when He whispers, and don't wait for Him to shout. How often has something heavy happened in our life, and we look back and we realize, oh my gosh, if I only would have listened back then. And then, but the Almighty loves us too much to say, well, I tried. You got your life, I got mine. Good luck, all right? We never give up on our children. We tell them the right thing to do, and they don't listen. Do we just write them off? No. We try in a different way. We never give up. We do everything we can, creative, behind the scenes, whatever it's going to take to get through to that kid because we love them so much. We never give up on them. Sometimes we have to give them a punch. Sometimes we have to take something away that makes them cry. Sometimes we have to say no. The Almighty loves us too much to give up on us. He cares. And that's why the tests are happening. How do you know that something's a test? Because it's hard. And what's hard for you is not hard for me. And what's hard for me may not be hard for you. But if it's hard for you, it's a test. And why is the Almighty sending the test? Because He loves us and He wants us to be great. Bless you. That's why. Because He cares. When we're in a high state, clear, connected, calm, be grateful. When we're in a low state and we're freaking out, be graceful. Time takes care of a lot of things. Again, a lot of things that we're freaking out about never even happen. If they happen, the Almighty has sent this test to you, and He's already given you all the resources you need to pass the test. He's already given you the resources. All the people and all the, I'm sure you've seen this in life. It says God sends the solution even before the problem. Don't freak out. Everything happens for a reason. The Almighty loves us. No one said this was going to be easy. I looked in the Torah backwards and forwards, looking for the line that says this will be easy. It actually says the opposite. This is not going to be easy. And what we go through in the scheme of our eternity, this is not my talk on soul in the afterlife, but in the scheme of our eternity, and this world isn't all there is. This world is a blip. It's a blink of an eye. But what happens in that blip, what happens in that blink of an eye, will affect all of our eternity. This is a world to strive and to accomplish and to work hard. And they don't call it growing pains for nothing. You have all of eternity to hang out. The women who come to my regular classes know never to say the C word in my class. What's the C word? Comfortable. Comfortable. Don't say you're comfortable. Don't say, Lori, I'm comfortable in my marriage. I'm comfortable in my Judaism. I'm comfortable in my community. I'm comfortable. You know what comfortable means? You stopped trying. You stopped trying. This is not a world for comfort. Again, you have all of, the big hurrah is in Olam Haba, all right? Like you have all of eternity to hang out and to bask in the choices and the growth that you made in that blip in this world. Don't get comfortable. And be careful. Don't make choices and decisions based on what other people think. It is astonishing to me how many of us, it's human nature, will make major choices in life based on what other people think. I was in the pediatrician's office in Toronto years ago, and all the kids are sharing their germs with the toys. And two women, everybody Jewish used this pediatrician, religious, not religious, and two women who were not religious, but clearly Jewish, were sitting across from me, and I couldn't help but overhear their conversation. And they're talking, and one of them looks over at the little kids and says, you know, we're thinking about having another baby. And her friend goes, what are you talking about? You have a girl, you have a boy, you fit into your genes. What do you need another baby for? She goes, oh, you're right. Okay, like, that's how we make a choice about whether we bring another human being into the world. You fit into your genes? Are you joking? And that's how people make choices. I hate to break the news to you, but you get very little airtime in your friends' lives. You really think you're the topic conversation? You're not. You're in between, past the potatoes and past the corn. And in between past the potatoes, you're, oh, did you hear that so they're switching schools? And like, what are they getting religious? I'm really past the corn, on to another subject. You're in between past the potatoes and past the corn. You're in between the order of Starbucks and did you hear I got a new car? And in between, they're talking about you. That's it, man, okay? That's the amount of airtime you get in your friends' lives. And you're gonna make choices based on that. The choice on where to send our children to school, the school we choose for our children, it's not who our kids are going to be, it's who your grandchildren are going to be. This is a heavy, big choice. These choices matter. And not just for here, but for eternity. please do not make these choices in a state of anxiety and guilt. Do not make those choices. Wait again to be clear, calm, and connected. And it says in Pirkei Avot, make yourself a Rav. Have somebody in your life that you can go to who's going to help you make these choices. King Solomon was the wisest man who ever lived, and he had a rabbi. Why would the wisest man who ever lived need a rabbi? Because we are very subjective about our lives. Because it's our life. We need somebody objective to help us. But when it says make yourself a Rav, that doesn't mean just choose him. He married my parents. He's local. Would you choose a heart surgeon because it's convenient? All right? A decorator even? No. You want the best. You want the decorator's decorator. You want the doctor's doctor. You want the rabbi's rabbi. You should look around. You should meet with them and get them to understand who you are. Make them your Rav means have a relationship with them. So that you have somebody in your life that you can go to when things are for an objective, wise voice, and because they know you, and if they're a big Rav, if they're really wise, if I went to them with a question, and you went with the exact same question, they would give us two different answers. Because within halakha, within Jewish law, there is a breadth, right? It's not black and white. There's lenient and strict opinions. They know who's in front of you. They know who's in front of them. And they can give the right wisdom and guide us in the right way. One of the first questions I ask a guy who is like, let's say I know a girl and she's dating a guy and she wants me to meet him, check him out. So the first question I ask him is, who's your Rav? Who's your rabbi? And if he goes, I don't really have one. Thank you, goodbye. Okay, it's been nice knowing you. Everybody needs a rabbi, but especially men. Especially men. Because a man without a Rav thinks he's it. Sorry, guys, all right? And he thinks that you need somebody to keep them in check. Somebody to say, you know what, you're not so it, all right? And you need to consult. There are things that you see that in the Torah and in Judaism that Judaism is so practical. Rabbi Kellerman says if it's not practical, it's not Torah. It's really there to help us to make the right choices to get the most pleasure out of life. But again, we're just running around in circles. Remember I told you about the GPS? Until you know where you're going, God can't get you there. We're just like, we're on the Beltway. We're like, ooh, north, south, east, and west. We don't know where the heck we're going. It starts with you. Until you know who you are and where you're going, if you're single, you don't know who to go with. And until you know who you are and where you're going, and again, we're going to talk about marriage this afternoon more, how can you possibly achieve what you need to achieve? The Almighty gave us an incredible, unbelievable life, and so much opportunity. And yes, a lot of challenges. And those challenges are meant for you, in a box, tied up with a bow, sent to you with love from the Almighty. And this is our opportunity to grow. Every person in our life, every challenge is there because God loves us. Stop living in illusion. Get out of future and past and be here. Be present. Shabbos helps us with this. Shabbat. Shabbat tells you, be here. We don't add to the world, we don't take away from it. You're not even allowed to talk about things that are going to happen after Shabbat on Shabbat. If I start going to my daughter like, you know what, Wednesday I think you have an appointment. She goes, Shabbos. Okay, no, be here. It takes effort to be here, especially those of us who have busy, busy minds. Be here. I'm a future person. I literally was obsessed with the future. What's going to happen, what's going to happen. Even if I'm sitting there playing a game with my kids, I'm flipping out about, planning things. I was never here. And then I learned this wisdom, and I'm working very hard at being present. And when I start flipping out, I say, because that voice in my head, what's going to happen, what's going to be? I replace it with a different voice. My voice is, Lori, be present. Hashem will take care of the future. And I immediately feel that this huge weight has been lifted off my shoulders. I didn't grow up religious. I started my Jewish journey in my 20s. When I realized that God ran the world, I was so relieved I didn't have to run it anymore. After the first Shabbat that I kept, I remember we made Havdalah, and I thought, the world kept turning without me. How do you like that? The Almighty created us. He knows who we are. He knows we can flip out. He knows that we can avoid challenge and opportunity. And he knows we're busy pointing fingers. If only that person would change, and in this economy, and this, and my mother-in-law. Instead of doing this and realizing that everything is going on, the Almighty's trying to get our attention. He's trying to squeeze the potential out of us. Stop living in the past. Stop dwelling on the past, and stop worrying about the future. The only thing that is real is now, and it's a gift. And that's why they call it a present. Thank you very much.